Hello and merry meet everybody and bright blessings. So just thought I'd sage for a little bit, get some beautiful smoke around. So welcome to my channel. I am Rowan Ravenwolf. I'm going to invite a few people to this live maybe. Boy, everything moves around every single time. So let's see, there we go. All right. It changes on me quite frequently. So, and one day I'll figure it out. So thank you everybody for joining. This is a safe space, but it is not for robots. So, free TikTok, you have been blocked. So, all right. So yes, I don't want people spamming in here. So if you do see it, I might be a little slow kicking them out. But this is a sacred space, and this is a safe space for discussions. And this is the first Witchy book club that I'm doing on TikTok. So I want to welcome everybody who's joining. So the book we are doing is Anatomy of Spirit. It's by Carolyn Myss. So this is actually an older book. It's been published multiple times. Let's see. 1996 was the first year. This is like, well, I have the 2017 copy. So I've seen a couple different copies. So we're going to talk about Anatomy of Spirit, and we're going to talk about this over several weeks. So if you haven't read the book and you're just getting here now, and you're like, oh, I haven't even read this book yet, it's okay. We're just reading the beginning. So we're going to do a chapter a week. And so this week, actually, because this is the beginning, I did the introduction. And welcome Moonflyer, welcome Brenda, welcome Sheila. If you've read the book and you want to jump up on panel, I'm going to let anybody up who has read the book if you want to discuss it. So tonight, I'll just kind of there we go. Can we see that? We can see that. All right. So we're talking about this first section right here, the introduction. Intuitive apprenticeship from hobby to profession and the final turn in the road. This is really how Carolyn Myss started out as an intuitive, what does she call it? Intuitive medicine. So very, very fun book if you haven't read it. This book actually, I read it a couple years ago. I've read it, this is my third time reading it. And I will tell you, there's a lot of really great information in this book. And it has been worth it reading it. Like the second time I read it, I felt more awake and alive. Because when I first read it, I'd been on my spiritual path maybe for a year. And I had checked it out from the library. And I was like, okay, that was a good book. And I'd wrote a couple things down from it, returned it to the library. And then my friend was like, when I read it, I was like, oh, I missed that. So that was when I bought it. And so this has been a really great addition. So if you are on a spiritual path for growing, honestly, so she talks about how she became a medical intuitive. And there's some pretty profound stories in the beginning and I'm a couple chapters in, but for the third time. And it is really profound. And if anybody has been on Alien T's spiritual panel, we've had a couple discussions about body, mind, and spirit, and about last week, this week, the discussion was on visualization and what we think, how we bring it about. And that's really what a lot of this is. There are so many profound stories in this particular book. So she doesn't really give names, but one of them that I'm pretty sure, I want to make sure that I'm sticking with this in the beginning. Yes. Okay. So, and it's in the beginning. She does talk about like several clients that she had, and one doctor out of Missouri, and I'm forgetting the doctor's name, but how he tested her. He literally just called up, said a patient's name and their age, and she was able to actually diagnose what was wrong over the phone. And he invited her to come and join her. And so she started this as she was a journalist and didn't find fulfillment in that position, and found that she had this beautiful gift of medical intuitiveness. So there we get this book. So the core beginning of this is her background. And she does talk about the importance of us maintaining that healthy body, mind, and spirit. So if you've not dealt with having balance in your body, mind, and spirit, she's really talking about how certain things can affect us in such a way that we can make ourselves sick. So, several of the examples, and I want to make sure I give the right example, because like I said, I've been reading a little bit ahead. And again, if anybody wants to join and come up on panel because you've read the book and you want to like throw out your thoughts, please feel free. So, okay, so the first thing, actually, I did really like this. So she talked about, in the beginning, in her introduction, she talks about how she went to Alaska with some friends, and her friends were all exhausted, so they went to sleep, and the person that drove them to their hotel, he dropped her off at a woman's house, and she was trying to see if I can see exactly what type. Okay, she was half Russian and half Athabascan, and I hope I'm saying that right. So Athabascan is our natives, or one of the native groups that are up in Alaska. And she actually learned so much from this woman, Rachel. She was teaching a little bit about spiritual traditions, and it really opened Carolyn's eyes. So she talked about a blanket. So in their culture, they weave these beautiful, gorgeous blankets. But when you are a weaver, if you start the blanket, you have to be able to finish it. And if you, before you unalive, before you pass. And she was talking about how somebody who was creating a blanket, it was almost finished, and the Great Spirit went to the blanket weaver and told her to prepare. I'm going to just actually read. It was almost finished, and the Great Spirit went to the blanket weaver and told her to prepare. I'm going to just actually read this. The blanket was almost finished when the Great Spirit came in a dream to the woman who was making it and told her to prepare to leave the earth. She asked the spirit if she could live long enough to finish the blanket, and the spirit said yes, she would be given that and much more time. She unalived 2 days after finishing the blanket. Her spirit is in that blanket in a good and powerful way, and it gives me strength. So that's what Rachel is saying. And this beautiful native basically says that, like, you know, in a nutshell, that life is short and simple. We need to really embrace the beauty in our life. And even just reading that story was really profound. Because, you know, and when you're ready to hear it. So I almost wanted to go up and meet this Rachel person up to Alaska and meet Rachel. So, I mean, it sounded like it's such an amazing experience that Carolyn had. So, again, this is the book, The Anatomy of the Spirit. Please feel free, if you've read the book or if you know about medical intuition and you would like to come up on panel, I will let anybody up. This is a spiritual safe place, so there is no judgment. We want to have really nice discussions. So discussions always help everybody grow. So no arguments, and trolls will be immediately blocked. Sorry. I don't have room for trolling. Life is way too short for that. I don't know why you'd want to waste your time. But if you are here, please don't forget to give this video a heart so that I know that you like it and that you want to hear more. I'm going to have a bunch of questions next week for Witchy Book Club, so please make sure you come next week. We will be reading the first chapter. So tonight I'm just going over the introduction, and so we probably won't be up as long. Next week we'll be up a little bit more. And I see Meditherapy, welcome. All people, and Sheila, welcome, and Love Today, welcome, welcome, welcome so much, everybody who's here. I really do appreciate everybody popping in. It does. It is wonderful to have people joining. For those that are new, this is the first time I'm doing Witchy Book Club on TikTok. So I used to do it in a private Zoom. And I thought, hey, why not make it available to more people? And then if people want to come up on panel, they can. Because I know sometimes in book clubs, there are some people who just come to listen and some want to actually chat about the book. So I thought it would be really great to bring it here. And if you go to my profile and like my page, my Patreon, I do a deep dive on Tuesdays. So this last Tuesday, I did a deep dive into lots of details into the introduction, and I read lots of passages. And the deep dive, another deep dive will post on this Tuesday for the first chapter that we'll discuss in a week on Sunday. So the first inspiration that Carolyn Myss had about medical intuition was her experience with the Native American up in Alaska. And it was very, very beautiful. So if you want to, because I know sometimes I used to always skip introductions in books. And when I started the spiritual path, I realized there's so much usually in the introduction that gets us into the core of the book. And so I do read the introductions. I find them very informative and very helpful. So I hope that you do too. If you want to know where the story of Rachel starts, it starts on page 16. So if you have, well, this is the 2017 edition, so maybe the other editions might be different because there are a lot of printings of this book. If you've ever had a chance to meet Carolyn Myss, it's because she teaches you how to become a medical intuitive. So if you want to do it for yourself or for your family, like she literally gives you the principles. That's what's really neat about this book. It's the 7 stages of power and healing. And that's what's really great about this book. So the introduction really, it just kind of, it's showing you her pathway to this beautiful gift. And she had the gift. It was just a matter of developing it and using it every day. Something that we all have. I believe, my opinion is that we all have the ability to access the Clara gifts, but it's a matter of if we actually use those gifts or not. And if we don't use them, we lose them. It's just, like everybody says, oh, it's like riding a bike. Get on the bike and you can just ride it if you haven't ridden for a while. But if you haven't ridden for a while, you're going to fall off a couple times. I mean, let's be real. I went a long time without riding my bike. And when I got back on it, it was a struggle. And then I was like, okay, I caught on. So it's the same thing if we are going to use our intuitive gifts. So, and welcome everybody who's just new. Please don't forget to give me a heart. So, and if you've read the book, Anatomy of Spirit by Carolyn Myss, and you want to come up and have a book club discussion with me. If not, that's fine. I'm just going to kind of chat and talk until I sign off. So, and I'll give like some little tips and tricks here. So again, this is just the introduction that we're going through. So, she also talks about, the doctor that she met that tested her ability was Norm Shaley. So, Norm literally called her up, gave her a person's name and age, and she was able to diagnose the person. So, And actually, this was a really sweet story. So it starts on page 23, and I'm just going to kind of summarize the story for you. So she gets a call from a very worried father because his son is sick. And the son is gay and has HIV. And this is taking place in the late 80s. I don't remember the year off the top of my head. I'm sure it's here in the pages, but it's taking place in the 80s. And she basically reaches out to the son, talks to the son. She actually is able to diagnose him and says, I believe that you have HIV. And he said, yes, it's full-blown AIDS. And he ended up with the pneumonia from it. And the son was more scared to tell his father about what was going on with his health. So she worked with the son and the father, and this process with medical intuitiveness. So a lot of our illnesses, and this is what this is all about, a lot of our illnesses we actually create because of something going on within us. And so it was that type of situation. But this son, he was able to overcome what had made the HIV full-blown AIDS and actually healed himself. And so Carolyn was used in a lot of medical, she's actually got articles published because it's that mind over matter. It's that thinking. And it is very profound. We have so much power in our mind. We only touch a very small percentage. They believe that we're only using 10% of our brain. And the thing is that I don't want you to test yourself, but think about it. So she gives a lot of examples in the introduction of what really inspired her down this path and how she came up with the 7 stages of power and healing. And it really is mind over matter. It's getting your mind in a mindset. So I'm going to actually use a couple different examples. So I have a friend from high school. I shouldn't even say high school. I've literally known her since I was 4 years old. And when we were younger, it didn't faze me. It didn't click, all of the negativity that she had and how it actually manifests in her life. And, she's lonely. She has on and off, she's got illnesses all the time. And, I started to realize that negativity, instead of her finding the positive and changing to a gratitude attitude, that negativity is pulling her down and she's getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And she's not fun to hang out with. So I don't actually live in the same state with her anymore. But I used to when I would go back to my hometown where I was born and visit family and friends, I would always reach out to her to go to lunch. And I started realizing it wasn't fun going anymore because of the fact that she was always sick and she couldn't have this food or that food. And it was just really hard to try to get that in. So I was realizing something just wasn't right and it just wasn't with me, right? So the second time I read the book, because the first time I read it, I really was trying to read it for myself. So the second time I read this book was really how can I make myself better? How can I help my family? How can I help those that I love? I'm not saying I'm a medical intuitive. I do Reiki sessions and I do crystal healing sessions. So I'm doing the energy healing and crystal healing for people. And I do work with herbs with my family. But so with this, I literally realized she's making herself sick and it's not fun to be around somebody who does that. So one of the other stories in here was about someone whose spouse was cheating on them. And instead of dealing with those effects, it actually caused an illness which actually unalived the person. we can make ourselves sick. And that's where a lot of this is going. It's that mind over matter, and taking what we are thinking about and shifting it. We need to make that shift and that transformation in our own lives to make ourselves healthy and have that balance in our mind, body, and spirit. Because if our mind and our spirit are unhealthy, we are going to manifest it physically. So if you've ever had like that experience, I can personally say, when I was dealing with some stuff and I was dealing with like a lot of stress, I was having severe headaches. And all of a sudden I was like allergic to stuff that I'd never been allergic to before, which was so weird. I was like, this is weird. How do you go your whole life and you're never allergic? And now all of a sudden I'm allergic to things. As soon as I started removing that stress and doing stuff to cope with the stress, the physical elements started to disappear. They were just like, they were slowly going away. And I was like, oh. And then when it clicked, it was like, it was my mindset. Like, I was so stressed out, I was creating illness for myself. And so that's what this whole book is about. And again, if you're here, thank you so much. I see a lot of beautiful people coming in and out of the live. So thank you so much for joining. And this is a spiritual safe place. Tonight we're discussing the introduction to Anatomy of the Spirit, the 7 Stages of Power and Healing by Carolyn Myss. Please do not forget to give me a heart on this video if you're watching. All the hearts help. And just as a side note, I will be live on Tuesday with Tuesday Tarot, and that will be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Thursday I will be live with a spiritual topic at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then again, next Sunday, we'll be doing the first chapter. So with that, I'm going to jump back into a little bit. So tonight is just the introduction, but I do want to read a little bit. So I've kind of just talked about some of this stuff from the introduction. Oh, and please feel free, if you've read the book or if you have anything that you want to add as I am talking, to ask to come up on panel, because that's what part of book discussion is to have others come up so that you don't have to listen to me the whole entire time. I mean, I know I have a fun voice, but so I'm just gonna read the back of the book. So, Anatomy of Spirit is the boldest presentation to date of energy medicine by one of the premier practitioners, internationally acclaimed medical intuitive, Carolyn Myss, based on 15 years of research into energy medicine. Dr. Myss's work shows how every illness corresponds to a pattern of emotional and psychological stresses, beliefs, and attitudes that have influenced corresponding areas of the human body. Anatomy of the Spirit also presents Dr. Myss's breakthrough model of the body's 7 centers of spiritual and physical power, in which she synthesizes the ancient wisdom of 3 spiritual traditions: the Hindu chakras, the Christian sacraments, and the Kabbalah tree of life, to demonstrate the 7 stages through which everyone must pass in search for higher consciousness and spiritual maturity. With this model, Dr. Myss shows how you can develop your own latent powers of intuition as you simultaneously cultivate your personal power and spiritual growth by teaching you to see your body and spirit in a new way. Anatomy of the Spirit provides you with the tools and spiritual maturity and physical wholeness that will change your life. So she actually does live here in Chicago, so I'm not picking people because they're in Chicago, but so those of you know I'm in the Chicagoland area. So, she does, so she studied theology. So she does talk about that in the introduction, how she actually was a journalist and she studied theology. She doesn't touch on a lot of things. She doesn't touch on paganism. I am a pagan. She doesn't touch on Buddhism. She doesn't touch on Islam because she didn't study those. So she doesn't want to misrepresent anything from their learning. So I do like that, number one, she admits that she doesn't understand their theology, but she has taken a lot of this. And the chakras, I think, like the chakras are really important. And the chapters we're going to start diving into starting next week, we're going to dive into the chakras. So, and quite frankly, what I've noticed when I do energy healing, crystal healing, on my clients and on myself and on my family members, our chakras play a huge role in our growth and our progression. And if we're not balanced, that will affect our body, mind, and spirit. And so that's, I think, one reason why this is such an impactful. Now, I know she has her PhD, but it does not say what it's in. I think it might be in theology, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm just going to kind of check. Oh, yep, here we go. Okay, let's see. Well, maybe it doesn't have what it is. No, it doesn't. But she does have several other books out. I know that she has come to the Theosophical Society here in the Chicagoland area that's out in Wheaton, and she has done talks there, and she does things all the time. So another thing that was really neat is she does these seminars. And at these seminars, she was actually trying to tell people what was wrong with them, but she was getting really exhausted. And then she was there all night because she'd have hundreds of people. And so she's telling each individual person. And one person in the audience was kind of a skeptic of the whole intuitive medicine. And she sat there with her. And then she's like, well, you know what? I'm going to teach you guys how to figure it out on your own. And so she did change up, and that's how this book kind of came about, was the change up on its own to actually learn to read your own body. Like, that's like really important for us to be able to do. So that's really what the premise of the introduction is to understand our whole body. So I think I'm gonna just kind of talk about, so next week I'll be doing the first part of the book, and I'm only doing the first chapter, which, so this will be next Sunday will be the discussion. So the part 1 is a new language of the spirit, and it consists of 2 chapters. So again, we're doing a chapter a week, so you don't have to feel like you have to read the whole book, and we're going to have like this full discussion next week. But the chapter 1 is energy, medicine, and intuition. It's a really cool chapter. So if you haven't read it, please feel free to join my Patreon or pick up the book. And I suggest try to go to a smaller bookstore. Let's support small businesses. Or if you're in an area where a Theosophical Society is, they usually have a bookstore attached to them, and you can pick. They usually always have her books there. So she organized it this way. So the chapter 1 introduces the principles of the medical intuition that she's come to know. And chapter 2 introduces a complementary and new model of a human energy-based system that she synthesized upon the 3 teachings of Hinduism, Christianity, and Judaism, the Tree of Life. So I'm really excited to jump into that. So that's not going to be this next week. That will be the week after. So we're just going to get like that brief little history and get to know that, because quite frankly, if we're in a spiritual path, we are like embracing all of this beautiful newness with spirituality and religion, because quite frankly, that's one thing I love about being pagan, is there are certain Hindu and Buddhist principles I'm like, I like this, so like we can take things depending, like in your spiritual path, you don't even have to, like, you can just be spiritual and take what works with you and your belief system from any system. So chapter 2 is going to be really fun. So, part two, she has chapters 1 through 7, and they're the anatomy of the power centers in the human body, with basic information and real life case studies to illustrate how energy data in our spiritual development, how we can use that. And then she ends it with a guide for contemporary mystics. So we're going to be doing a chapter a week. So this is going to be through May. So please feel free to definitely share this video. But, if you want to talk about anything on this, in this book, whether you've read it or like I've given you enough information where you're like, this is really cool, I'm really excited, please feel free to jump up on the panel. Or I'm watching for comments. Sorry. I see lots of people joining, coming and going. And so thank you, especially if you just joined, like Dana Eden, thank you for joining. And Dawn, thanks for joining. And Sheila, thank you for joining. So this book, like I said, this is the third time I'm reading it. I'm getting so much more out of it. As I grow in my spiritual awareness and my healing process, I am learning and growing so much more. And I'm so excited to like share, like the first chapter, there's like, I have so many notes. It's like not even funny how many notes I have. So next week will be like, I have a lot. So you guys will all really enjoy that. But what I really want to stress is what we think about, we bring about. And I have done this in my life. My mother she always said that to me. And I was like, I mean, like, seriously, I literally would be like, eye roll, even though my mom was right. Because I was like, Mom, you don't understand. You're not in this situation. You haven't dealt with this. I just wanted you to listen. And it was hard because like when you talk to somebody and you just want them to listen and then they're like, what you think about, you bring about, you're like, stop already. Sorry. That was kind of my thing with my mom. But it really is true. Like with sound healing, for example, I'm actually working on my sound healing certification right now. So there are studies within major medical schools like Harvard Medical School where they have taken patients and they have given so many patients that have, like, let's say for instance, hypertension, and they'll have like 100 patients with similar hypertension that do not get self-Elgio frequencies or sound therapy. And then they have 100 patients with the same similar hypertension that they're getting the sound therapy. And guess what? The patients that are dealing with the sound therapy, in addition to the regular medical treatment, are healing faster. This is the same thing with Reiki. So I'm a very big proponent of Reiki. Reiki has made a huge impact in my life. Huge impact. And even with Reiki, there are studies with Reiki that Reiki healing energy in conjunction with modern medicine will heal. But this book is going deeper. This book is saying it's more than just finding, like energy healing and sound healing and crystal healing and holistic medicine. It's more than that. It's shifting your thoughts. Because if we hold on to something painful in our life, it is going to manifest somewhere in our body. And she's literally mapped this out. Like, so when we get to part 2, we're going to start learning the map out stuff. So it's going to be like, that's going to be the deep dive stuff. So if somebody comes in and they say they have chronic headaches or migraines, it can be traced back to a trauma that you had at some point in your life. So it could be a childhood trauma or it could be an adulthood trauma, and something that you're like, well, that's not a trauma. It actually might be. I was recently in a discussion with a couple other spiritual leaders, and we were just sitting there chatting. And one of the girls said, my brother has trauma, and he didn't think it was trauma. And I said to him, this is trauma. And what his trauma was that his wife would get mad at him for playing his Xbox on the TV in their front room. And why does it have to be hooked up here where this is the room for everybody else in the family? Why can't you unhook it and like go to the basement or something? And it traumatized him because like that was a place that he felt comfortable and that he just wanted to unwind. And so he was traumatized by it, but didn't realize it. And so he was having the conversation with his sister, who happens to be a friend of mine who is another high priestess, and she was telling me that, you know, like, he was traumatized by it. A kid being told, no, you can't have ice cream before dinner. That can be a traumatizing. They may be like, oh, my mom was so mean and told me no. And like, they need to work through that and heal that no and understand, well, you know, there's reasons we don't have dessert before dinner, and we know you didn't want to hear no, but you need to work through it so that it doesn't affect them and become a trickle effect. So sometimes it can be something really simple that is traumatic and really affects a person. And that in turn can cause physical ailments as bad as cancer. So one of the examples she gave of the gentleman who unalived, it was the wife cheating, and I believe it was pancreatic cancer, and he passed away from it because he never faced, like, had that conversation with his wife and said, hey, this has hurt me. He never did what he needed to do to heal that broken heart. And it manifests in certain parts of our body. And it doesn't mean, like, we may not always be able to confront the person that maybe caused the trauma, because maybe we lost touch. Like, maybe it was somebody from high school or college, and it's been 10 years and you have no idea where they are. You're not friends on any social media. So you're like, I don't know how to get in touch with them. But they impacted you and you didn't address it then. But there are ways that you can heal yourself from that, because you don't need to hold on to it. So there's lots of different ways to let it go. So I think the most important thing is, if you are ready to shift your life and transform your life, this is going to be an excellent read. We are going to have so much fun as we deep dive into this book. And again, this was just the introduction that I'm going over, and I've kind of gone over it, and I didn't see any questions or anybody wanting to come up on panel. So I'll talk just a little longer, but we're really going to deep dive, like, what can we do to heal ourselves? How can we take the principles and theories that she's got in this book and apply it in our lives? If you're a healer, if you're an energy healer or a sound healer or a shaman, how can you apply it for the people that you help? If you're a nurse or a doctor, how can you apply it to the people that you help? Because we can apply those things, especially like if you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist, like, we can apply a lot of these spiritual techniques. When we incorporate the spirit with the mundane, we actually become more powerful and more empowered, and we become stronger, and we find more balance in our body, mind, and spirit. We find more health. And we'll live longer, and we'll live happier, more beautiful lives. And that's like the most important thing, is to live that beautiful, amazing life that we want to. So any questions? I know it looks like there's a few of you in there. No one's like put any questions in. Please don't forget to give me a heart. I love little hearts. And if you're not following me yet, please remember to follow me. I will be going live tomorrow with Alien Tea on Alien Tea's channel. So please feel free to join tomorrow. So look, like, I'll post, I think I might have reposted it. If I haven't, I will repost it. So if you're not following me, please make sure to follow me. So I'm going to wrap this up because I don't see any questions or comments right now. But again, this is The Anatomy of Spirit by Carolyn Miss, The 7 Stages of Power and Healing. This is going to be very profound. It's going to be an amazing book. We'll be reading chapter 1, part 1. So read it for the next week. Next Sunday, I have a boatload of questions and a boatload of stuff to talk about. So I can probably talk for a good 40 minutes next week, if not longer. Actually, it's probably longer than 40 minutes. I mean, let's just be real. But I want to thank everybody who has joined me tonight. It means a lot that you came and joined. I've got quite a wonderful lineup for the year for Witchy Book Club. So I do call it Witchy Book Club because I am a witch and I am a practicing pagan who is practicing witchcraft. Not all pagans practice witchcraft, but I do both. So I am very excited to be able to bring Witchy Book Club. So our first one is Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Miss. So pick it up. You can join my Patreon for the deep dive, and the deep dive starts at the $5 level. So you don't have to do if you want one of the levels with classes, then you can feel free to join one of the levels where you get classes. But if not, you can join for the deep dive, because the deep dive is really deep and you get a lot of other stuff too. So, and next week, don't forget, read part 1, chapter 1, and I will love to have, and thank you, Mauser, for, I'm gonna celebrate. There we go. You're up there. Yay. Oops. Oh, I lost you. Well, I did give you a little celebrate. I hope it was there long enough for you to see it. So thank you. Thank you so much, Mauser, for joining. I really appreciate that. So next week I'm going to deep dive, and the first chapter in part 1, chapter 1 has a lot. And actually, I'm really glad that I'm dividing this book up a chapter a week, because there is a lot to dive deep into. So very, very exciting. And I just realized I have the special anniversary edition. So I did not talk about the preface. I didn't read into that. We just did the introduction tonight. So I believe that chapter 1 is about 30-40 pages. I want to end. This is actually kind of pretty. So before I end, I do want to share this. So I'm going to read this right from the book. It's at the end of the foreword. This is extended from the traditional prayer by Reverend Jim Cotter and printed in his book Prayer at Night, Carnes Publications, Sheffield, England, 1988. I just thought this was really beautiful. And one thing I love is if I find something beautiful, I want to share it. And so I do want to share this. God be in my head and in my understanding. God be in my eyes and in my looking. God be in my mouth and in my speaking. God be in my tongue and in my tasting. God be in my lips and in my greeting. God be in my nose and in my smelling, inhaling. God be in my ears and in my hearing. God be in my neck and in my bumbling. Yeah, bumbling. Okay. God be in my shoulders and in my hearing. God be in my back and in my standing. God be in my arms and in my reaching, receiving. God be in my hands and in my working. God be in my legs and in my walking. God be in my feet and in my grounding. God be in my joints and in my relating. God be in my guts and in my feeling. God be in my bowels and in my forgiving. God be in my loins and in my swerving. God be in my lungs and in my breathing. God be in my heart and in my loving. God be in my skin and in my touching. God be in my flesh and in my paining. God be in my blood and in my living. God be in my bones and in my dying. God be at my end and at my receiving. I just thought that was really sweet. If you believe in a goddess and a god, you can say goddess and god, or goddess. If you believe in Allah or Buddha, you can substitute that. I thought that was very beautiful, and I did want to share that. So because it was very beautiful, and that is right at the foreword. So if you do want to get a copy of the book, please support small bookstores. If you do, go get a copy of the book. And next week we'll do part 1, chapter 1. And I'm so excited to go over that with you. Like, each chapter is going to be very exciting, especially if you are growing spiritually and you want to transform your life. So I want to thank everybody. Please don't forget to give me hearts as I start to wrap up tonight. And thank you so much, everybody who has come and has joined. Just as a reminder, I will be live on Tuesday for Tuesday Tarot, 1-card tarot readings, and I'll give some little ideas on tips and tricks on tarot reading. And I will have a small panel of of other friends in the spiritual community who may have input. Or also, we had a beautiful one last week where we were doing, you got 2 cards. You got one from me and one from my very dear friend Bren. And then Thursday, I have like hard decision which spiritual topic to do, but I have like 3 on my list right now, and there will be a spiritual panel on Thursday at 9:30 p.m. 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that's 6:30 p.m. for anybody on the Pacific Coast, so Pacific Standard Time. So don't forget to follow me if you are not following me, and don't forget to give me hearts and likes, and I will see you more this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Merry meet, merry part, bright blessings, and namaste.